with a whole bunch of knowledge also. So let's get started then as we look at, as you're building that relationship with your chemical vendor. You need to look at it as a partnership. Use them to help you, and trust me, these guys and gals want to provide you with as much as they can, because if they can get engaged with you, it makes their whole process much better. So one of the first things is you develop that relationship with your chemical vendor and start that managing your whole process. Make sure you state your expectations. What are you expecting from your vendor, and that way he or she'll know what is expected of them, and they'll hopefully tell you up front some things they can't do. And I'm going to go over a few of those here in a minute that most of the chemical companies now will not do, but they will help you, but they won't do for you. But basically work with your chemical rep, meet them halfway. As I'm sure the panel will talk about, the plants that are a joy to work with are the ones that will take the recommendations that these panels have made, or excuse me, these reps have made, and work with them and try to improve their sanitation program. So, what's the goal of your operation? Why are y'all in business? And the way I look at it, your plant is there to produce a quality, safe food product. So that's the bottom line in all this is and these chemical vendors are there to help you improve that process and make you achieve your goals of that safe food quality product. And so what we're going to talk about today is either, some of y'all might refer to them as food safety programs or sanitation programs, but I'm going to give you a little, for lack of a better term, the kind of the prerequisite prior to getting into the panel discussion. I want to mention one more time is if you do have questions, please put them in the chat box. And my plan is for me not to answer the questions, but for Kathy to compile the questions, and we'll use those to kind of jump off with the panel, because everything I'm going to talk about, all these guys are familiar with and should be able to answer your questions as we move forward. So what we're looking at then is the sanitation program documentation. What does it take to document what you're doing? And also your goal is that safe food product, but we're dealing with the real world here. And as y'all know, you get audited. And so you need to have documentation that will verify what you're doing and show an auditor or even one of your customers, or excuse me, one of your customers who might come in and want to see, what you're doing on your sanitation program before a Walmart or a Burger King or a McDonald's will buy from you. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. So this documentation is there to help you control and optimize your sanitation team so that you can get the job done. And then we'll talk about at the end, how do you verify your sanitation program? And I'll refer when we get down to that part. The CGMPs is a very good document talking about what you need to verify and verification of your sanitation program. So the first group of documents I'm going to look at is, I'm calling it operational, and this terminology that I'm using, there's no reg on this, but again, I'm looking at the operational stuff the plant, your operations must put together. And the two things that jump out is you should have a master sanitation schedule in your SSOPs, your sanitation standard operating procedures. And these are documents that you put together. Now, yes, you could get input from your chemical vendor, but remember, when you put these documents together, this is what you are telling both your customers and an auditor. I must be doing this, what these documents say, to produce that safe food product. So again, as you put these together, they're definitely the linchpin for your whole program, and what your whole program and what your chemical vendor will be providing you to back up these documents. So the first thing is a master sanitation schedule. Most of these now are computerized. There's several good programs out there. I've also talked to plants that apparently the maintenance department has some good programs for them to do their scheduled maintenance that a lot of plants have then converted to do their master sanitation program or schedule on. But basically, it's a document, and this is an Excel sheet that you list all the items that you're going to clean, and then the frequency that you're going to clean them. And you can see, this is actual vegetable plant, so they don't clean every day like protein plants or dairies and other organizations. So notice, they have stuff they do every 3 days, they have stuff they do weekly, and they have stuff they do monthly. What I liked about this one, and the QA manager that shared this with me, he also put his swabs on there so he could keep track of, he wanted to swab certain areas at least every 3 days. Now, the one thing to remember on a master sanitation schedule is this is not an auditor or the FDA, USDA telling you how to clean your plant. This is you telling them what you're going to do. So let's say on the floors, I saw a lot of plants put this as something they would do a major floor cleaning every day or every 3 days, and they just couldn't do it, so they changed it to weekly. So the thing to remember on your master sanitation schedule is only put stuff that you can get to and get done. Next thing is your sanitation procedures or your SSOPs. And this is a document that, again, you put together that's going to tell the auditor or your customers how you're doing certain processes, sanitation processes in your plant. Notice most of them will have the initial issue date. So in this one, it was August of '99. It was superseded in 2008, and then this one was put in effect in 2014. So the auditors want to see a trail of how you've been keeping track of your sanitation procedures. But notice in it gives decent detail for foaming on how you're going to foam. But I mentioned earlier that there's certain things that your chemical vendor won't do. And this is a standard sanitation operating procedure that the plant puts together. And yes, your chemical vendor will give you input, but I want to show you why they will no longer write these for you. So as I scroll through these, notice this is a very detailed procedure, making hookups, making adjustment to different fittings and things like that. I want to get to the screen that shows, here's a knob and a setting you got to make, things like that. So 30 years ago, plants used to ask us to write their SSOPs, but then lawyers got involved for the chemical companies and said, wait a minute, what happens if the maintenance goes in there and makes some change to that circuit you're cleaning? They change this controller or whatever, but you still have a written procedure that the chemical company did and signed off on, but now it's not correct. And for liability reasons, they go, no, we're not going to do that anymore. You need to put together your detailed SSOP. And what we will provide you is the chemical information. So in this case, they're using a caustic additive, a caustic cleaner, how much to use, what concentration, things like that. They'll provide you that data, but they won't, again, do the detailed SSOP. And if you do have a chemical company that's still doing it, I would be surprised, because I know most of them, and I'll let the panel address it too, now they will assist, but they will not write these for you. So the next group of documents I kind of put under the general category, and for this discussion, I'm pretending, or let's assume that you're bringing in a new chemical vendor. So what kind of documentation are you looking to get from that vendor? Well, the first thing, he's going to have some kind of service commitment or agreement. And what I define a commitment is all you're doing is getting the chemistry from it. You're from the vendor. You're not requiring him to provide you with equipment, with foamers, whatever. You're just getting the chemistry, but you want to know how often he's going to come in and service your plant and what kind of documentation he's going to provide to that plant. I kind of defined an agreement as that next step up, that you're asking this chemical vendor to provide a significant amount of equipment or mini bulk tanks or bulk tanks. And for that kind of commitment, the chemical vendor is going to ask you for an agreement, say 3 or 5 years. As long as I meet my service commitment, you will honor this agreement and buy my chemistry for whatever period of time you sign in the agreement. 3-ring binders. Yes, I know that everybody is getting computerized. You have everything, on the computer. But I kind of like to remind you, and my favorite saying is, what happens at 3 a.m. in the plant? And does your sanitation team have access to the computer systems that would have all the documentation for your program? So I'm old school. I like to have a good 3-ring binder that I can keep hard copies of everything in that binder and put a cover sheet on it. Take a look in your office you're sitting in now and how many 3-ring binders do you have in that office. It's kind of difficult to find the chemical vendor's binder if you don't have a cover sheet or it labeled as such. So at 3 a.m. in the morning, if one of your sanitarians or your lead men need to look up something, they'll have access and can find the binder to work with it. Next document you would get from your chemical vendor is referred to as a letter of guarantee. Now I'm going to really date myself. Back when I first started in the industry, USDA would issue a letter to all the chemical companies for all their products, say they are approved to be used in food plants. 25 years ago, I believe it was, Congress took the money away from USDA to do that, gave that process to FDA, but did not give them any money to do it. So USDA said, we're not going to do it because we don't have the money to do it. FDA said they didn't give us the money to do it, so we're not going to do it. So what happens now is your chemical vendor will give you a letter of guarantee that states that all of the products they're selling you meet all the regulations that affect chemistry, detergents, and sanitizer in your plant, whether it be EPA, FDA, or USDA type regulations. Next, most of your plants your plant will probably ask for a letter of insurance to make sure your chemical vendor does have a liability insurance. Next documentation is safety wall charts. At a minimum, you should have one of these wall charts in your chemical cage. And as far as I know, every chemical company out there does make these wall charts. I also like to print off a letter size version of it and put it in the 3-ring binder, so it'll be there also. As you now get into more documentation for your program, you start getting more product specific. So you should have SDS sheets, hard copies, and electronic copies, because you don't know how many times I've gotten calls at 3 a.m. in the morning, and you have an audit going on. They can't find the 3-ring binder. So most chemical vendors now will, besides giving you the hard copies, will give you the electronic PDFs of their SDS sheets so that you can call them up right then and there. Plus, most of them have access to their SDS sheets on their website. But again, it kind of cuts out that step if you get the electronic copy. Same thing on labels. These auditors want to be able to look at a label and see what the usage range of the product that you're using. So they'd like to see the hard copy so that if they're doing their audit, they can refer back to it as they're reviewing your SSOPs. And then the tech data sheet is sort of a Reader's Digest version of taking the SDS and the label. And most companies will put then a tech data sheet that'll have a general description of the product, generic usage ranges of the product, and usually then has a section that shows you what the pH and things like that. All that data, all that information you can find on the SDS or the label, but it's kind of nice when it's on a one little page as a tech data sheet. Secondary container tags, your vendor should be providing these to you because again, any product you pump out of a bulk, mini bulk, tote or drum, or even out of a 5-gallon pail into some kind of secondary container must be labeled. This is more, yeah, your auditors look at it, but this is also one that OSHA can get you on. And I've had a lot of plants written up by OSHA for not keeping up with their secondary container tags. Next operational side I'm going to look at is stuff that that your chemical vendor could offer you, and hopefully you're taking advantage from them. The first one, and I'm going to go over, will be called working instructions, and this is a term I use, as I mentioned back at the on the SSOPs. Your chemical vendor should give you the chemical information, the chemistry you're using, the concentration, time, temperature, all that. I refer to that from me as a working instruction, and I'll show you an example here of how I get that information to my accounts. Service reports, this is the reports that hopefully you're getting from your rep, whether it be monthly, bi-monthly, weekly, whatever commitment you've gotten from the rep. And hopefully, and I know these guys on the chemical panel, the service report shouldn't be, he comes, your rep comes in, does an inventory, kicks the drums, takes you to lunch, and off he goes. The service report should be them actually observing your cleanups and helping you get better. As Silas mentioned, he likes to, set very strong expectations for his chemical vendors. And as a corporate QA manager, he had 20 plants. He'd like to see these chemical usage reports from all 20 plants. And I'll show you an example of it here in a minute. And chemical cost reports. So you want to know how much chemistry you're using and what it's costing you. And then the last thing the chemical vendor should be providing is test kits and procedures. So let's go over working instructions. And as I mentioned, this is a method that I got, what I call TAC, the time, action, concentration, temperature of the product you're using from me, so I can zero in. It was just a method I used to get that information to the customer. You might get it in an email form, on a Word document from your vendor. But I'm not going to take 100% credit for this because 20 years ago, the technical manager for Tillamook Cheese approached me. And as y'all know, 20 years ago was when Tillamook started their phenomenal growth curve. And he wanted a way to drill down so that the operators didn't have to have the SSOP there in front of them. And you can get on that TAC part of it. So again, the current operators, or to train a new employee. So what we came up with was this format, and yes, I use it now on all my accounts. So this is a brewery I put one together for. So you can see here, I get the time in a concise manner. The action in this case is CIP. If it was a foam one, it would say foam. So I got the time, action, the concentration over here. And because this is a manual operation, I told them physically how much chemistry to put in. If this was controlled by a connectivity controller, I would just give them the range of concentration they'd be wanting to run, and then the temperature. So it's a really concise document. Again, that's why I call it a working instructions. A neat thing about it, you could actually take it, laminate it, put it out by the whatever piece of equipment you're cleaning, or hand it to a new employee so that he didn't have to try to read through 9 pages of a detailed SSOP to find out what kind of chemistry he's using. Here's an example in a Stein oven, and you can see it's very busy. Again, this is all manual, adding the chemistry to the cleaning of this oven. So it's a great little document. And for me, who I visit this plant once a month, So I could print this out and have a great reference for me as I'm auditing their cleaning operation. I didn't have to try to memorize everything. I had a document to look at and actually service the account. Next thing you should get from your chemical vendor is some type of service report. And hopefully your vendor has asked for permission to take pictures so that he can include these pictures in his report. But it's going to be observations of what's going on in your during your cleanup, or in this case I'm calling it a visit report that he can make as he's walking through the plant, taking a look at stuff. And so again, he's got pictures so you can show, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. So most of these, a lot of companies will have systems built into their computer process to generate these service reports, or they're using a Word document or even a Excel document. But the old saying, you're not finished till the paperwork's done. This is something that'll help you move forward. And if an issue comes up, if you've kept all these service reports, you have something to refer back to see what issues were back, historically going on. Chemical usage reports. This is example one on an Excel spreadsheet. The simplest one would be you take, your vendor would take his beginning inventory, what he received during the period. So this is the last 28 days. So from December 18th, 2020 to January 1st, 2021, or January 14th, excuse me, 28 days. He'd check his invoices, record that, and then do the ending inventory and give you, some plants, all they want is just a monthly usage. Some plants wants to know how much per day I use. So you would take this monthly usage and divide it by 28. And then some plants want to know how many days with that ending inventory based on this usage, how many days left I have of chemistry. So the good, as Silas mentioned, managing your chemical vendor. The good thing on this, the thing that pops out on this is what happened. Why do I have 448 days of quat sanitizer? And I kind of base this on a thing that happened to me. A plant after my service, and I gave him the inventory. He had plenty of quat. One of his employees did their weekly inventory wrong. They panicked, and without calling me, they ordered another drum of quat, and they ended up with this much. So as a management tool, the question they asked me is, Don, can we send that drum back? And the management I did was, well, I don't want to really ship it all the way back. I've got 3 other customers in the area that are using this the same product. Let me see if I can, get them to order it and take it. So again, it's a good management tool for you to work with your chemical vendor. Next thing is chemical cost. A lot of plants want to know the cost each period, each month, whatever you're looking at. So again, you do your inventory and you get your usage, and then you put in the cost of that product. And this report then breaks it down cost per day. And then they add that up to show you a total daily cost. And then they also then do the math that's over for 28 days. I use $4,300 worth of chemistry. Other columns you might see out here, some plants want to know, how does this daily usage compare to survey data? In other words, if I told you were supposed to use 3 gallons of your acid cleaner a day and you're using 3.9, do I, as a chemical rep, why are we overusing, what's going on? So you can get reports to that kind of detail from your vendor. And the last couple of things I mentioned before, if you look at your GMPs, they talk a lot about verifying and verification of your sanitation program, and they actually, address each of these categories. So as you read through there, pretty much everything you're doing in your food plan is listed here, and they want you to verify that. And the way to verify it is using titration test kits. So again, all your chemical vendors offer these test kits, and you buy them, and we'll set you up with the test factors so that you can use them. But it's just a titration test kit that allows you to find out what concentration you're running your chemistry. And then as part of the service, normally your chemical vendor, when he's in the plant, he will then do the titrations of the circuits while he's there during his visit. And one thing I wanted to highlight here is, hey, what happens if he does one and it's out of range? In this case, he's getting 2 ounces per gallon, and the range was 0.75 to 1.5. So it highlighted in red. Well, all y'all as QA people or sanitation, you know about corrective actions. So what caused that, and what's the corrective action? What he found was the pump. Somebody had increased the air pressure setting on the pump, which made it run faster. So when the signal came, run this pump for 30 seconds, it pumped more product than it should have pumped. Or it could have been something else. But anyway, go find what the problem is and put the corrective action if any of these readings fall outside of your range. The other thing I like to do with my accounts is let me go back here. Most auditors will deduct points if, as your operator is doing the test, they don't have the instruction sheet with you. And their argument is, yeah, your sanitarian might have this test memorized, but the auditor doesn't. So if you don't have the instruction sheet, it'll be a point deduction. Well, a lot of times these samples will be taken back into the lab, and so there's your sanitarian or 2 sanitarians doing titrations. You're trying to look over their shoulder. So what I like to put together for my accounts were little kind of cheat sheets on the test, so they'd have something to look at, because it was hard to see the instruction sheet. So just, again, little documents to help y'all get the job done. The other thing you might have seen is you don't have a calculator readily available. So put together a sheet that names the product, names the test kit, gives you the factor, and then does the math for you and highlights the ranges. And then what you're probably starting to see here in the last 12 months or so is a lot of people are even going to this extent of putting the instructions on a sheet, putting the ranges, all the drop counts, so your sanitarians don't have to do calculator to find out what, in this case, parts per million is. So you might be seeing these out in the marketplace at this point also. And then the bottom line is, once you do those titrations, you need to log them in some way. So this is an example of a log sheet for a CIP system. This is an example of one of my plants had a checking the caustic on their ovens and how they locked it. So they had it set up, for 30 days. We put the answer here, the initial of the sanitarian that did the work, and then any corrective action if they were off on their titrations. So that was a kind of a quick down and dirty, a review of the documents. I'm going to let now the chemical panel jump in, and I'm not sure, I can't see chats if there's been any questions, but hopefully this will be kind of a starting off point. And what these guys now are going to talk about is what they've seen in really good sanitation programs. So let me see if I can unshare my screen. Give me just a minute.
So Dawn, we do have a couple questions. One
Okay.
is from Yvette Espinoza. What do you mean by safety wall chart?
That is a chart that will break down the chemistry in categories. So you'll have a heading for acid products, and then it'll give you basic safety information dealing with acid products, and then it'll have a category for caustic. It'll have a category for chlorinated products, one for neutral products, and most OSHA inspectors like to see those charts in the chemical cage at a minimum. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about here.
Okay.
Hey, Yvette, you may want to ask your chemical rep the next time he's in the plant, ask him to bring you a chemical chart for the chemicals that you use from his organization.
And I just saw one that is one of my pet peeves. Is there a titration test kit on the surface after it's clean? The short answer is no. You're probably talking organic. The organic people got themselves in a bind years ago by letting plants use quats on the floors and walls. And then they said, well, what if you use it on your equipment? I want you to verify that you rinse it all off. There is not a test to do that. What you can do though, and I've done this a lot, is if you want to prove that your sanitarians got all the detergents, your chlorinated alkaline foam cleaner or your alkaline foam cleaner rinsed off the equipment prior to applying the sanitizer, you can take a Q-tip, use the phenolphthalein that's in your, used on almost every test. Kind of like if you remember the old CSI show, you squirt some phenolphthalein on that Q-tip, rub it on the surface. If it turns pink, you didn't get all the detergent rinsed off. We use that quite effectively. We had a plant that had some sloping issues on their floors, and they were having trouble getting the detergent rinsed off the floor prior to applying their quat sanitizer. And what was happening, the anionic surfactant in their chlorinated alkaline foam cleaner reacted with the cationic surfactant in quat, and they just were not getting a good clean. But there is an organic certifier in California saying you can use ammonia strips to test the surfaces. And if you do that, you will always get zeros because ammonia is not the same thing as quaternary ammonia. And Silas, I'll let you take it over, and it's all yours.
Folks, does anybody need a bio break? If not, first thing I'd like to do is introduce our panel members. These gentlemen, 6 of them, have over 100 years of experience in sanitation chemicals, okay? So we truly have the best of the best. We have folks who are here because they want to help. So let me go through, read their bios off for you. And this is in no particular order. It just happens to be that this is the way they fell out this morning when I was stacking all my papers together. Okay, I want to start with Chris Barley. Chris is the Senior Northwest Account Manager for Ecolab in the Food and Beverage Division. He has over 15 years of service in the food safety industry. His first 10 years were in the dairy and cheese industry. Chris's central focus has been on innovating specialization in CIP, sanitation design, training, and operational efficiency for food production facilities across the Pacific Northwest. Chris focuses on helping customers with efficient, cost-effective, sustainable, and industry-leading sanitation programs. Chris focuses on relationships, building that relationship with his customers. I had the pleasure of working with Chris for a number of years and several of my accounts. Okay, thank you, Chris. Next is Gabriel Flores. Gabriel Flores has been the director of sales and marketing since 2017 with Westmar. He currently leads the teams here in the Pacific Northwest. He is a former Marine, hoorah. He is a retired peace officer. He has owned a restaurant for over 10 years, and he's worked in food operations. He's also worked for some of the largest chemical companies in the country. Again, tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise that he's willing to share. All you got to do is call and ask. Okay. Next is Kent Dowling. Kent Dowding. He's representing AFCO and ZEP here in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska and Western Canada. He is HACCP certified, he is SQF certified, and BRC certified. So your inspection schemes, he is very familiar with those and can help you get on track. He has over 26 years in chemical solutions and business, 15 years as a food sanitation expert. Thank you, Kent. Thank you for being here. Next is Doug Newberry. He works for ChemStation. ChemStation has over 61 facilities across the United States, bringing stock inventory and service closer to the end user. He is intrigued working for ChemStation and loves what he does. Okay, he has worked with ChemStation here in Oregon and Hawaii, and I want to ask, how did you get the Hawaii assignment also? Being in Oregon, that's a heck of a gig, man. But he was a rookie of the year for sales, his very first year with ChemStation. Second year, he was had the most improved quantity of sales. So he not only was the best the first year, but he upped himself the second year. And he's been in the top of the business for ChemStation 13 of the 17 years that he's been with ChemStation. Okay, so again, look at the experience that these guys are bringing to the table for you. Okay, thank you, Doug. Mike Nelson is next. Mike Nelson works for Rochester Midland. He's been with them for a little over 10 years. He came to the Pacific Northwest in 2019. Started working with the Amy's Food account down in Pocatello, Idaho. And he's got several other accounts down there, Mother's Earth Brewery in Nampa. He's got a winery down there also in Caldwell. Again, 33 years of experience that he's bringing to the table. You know, to put it your exposure, if you need help, he's a good guy to call. Last but not least is Albert Gaudino. 15 years in the cleaning and sanitizing industry as a district manager and account manager. He works with Du Bois Chemical, okay? Just recently moved over with them. But again, 15 years, a plant manager, a plant superintendent, a plant sanitarian, with the dairy, all in the dairy industry. So again, a tremendous amount of knowledge. Okay, so with these 6 guys, we've got over 100 years of experience here. And folks, I'm here to tell you, if you don't use these guys, you're crazy. Pick their brains every time they're in your facility. You know, instead of them taking you to lunch, you ought to be taking them to lunch. Okay, so these are the guys that we have. Let's see, look like we got about 7 questions in the chat box. So I'm going to ask the very first question here, so that we can get an opportunity to get a list of those questions. question is, my company currently receives chemicals in 55-gallon drums and 5-gallon pails. What do you recommend to reduce chemical costs and to improve the safety of chemical handling? Guys, anyone?
I can start it off, Silas, if you like.
Go ahead, Chris, go ahead.
You know, this is a kind of a little bit of a trick question. I would say the best thing you guys can do to control your chemical costs right off the bat is to check your concentrations. Let's make sure people aren't overusing chemical right off the bat. There are advantages to going to bulk and other things that will keep costs down, but you have to understand where your plant level is at too. Are you a big enough plant that uses enough chemical to make bulk worth your while? Bulk tanks are expensive and other things like that, but they will save cost over the years. But you have to look at, you know, is the juice worth the squeeze, or is the squeeze worth the juice? You know, you got to look at that scenario. But I would say for controlling chemical costs right off the bat, look at concentrations. That's your biggest thing.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that, Silas.
Yes, go ahead.
So a couple things you need to look at too, along with what Chris was talking about, is proportioning equipment. Whenever you let someone have the responsibility in mixing chemicals, when they do it manually, they're going to use about 20% more chemical. So if we can come in and put together some titration equipment, just to monitor the amount that's being used, because if a little works well, guess what? A little more even works better. So we want to change that mindset. Also, part of that service report, tracking the usage, really, looking at how much chemicals being used and looking at that month to month to month. So you can actually see not just overuse, but underuse, especially on sanitizers. A lot of times I'll be tracking a chemical, a sanitizer, and all of a sudden it's like being underused, and I start asking questions. And I find out it's usually a labor issue, people calling in sick. And, if it looks clean, they're assuming it's clean, and it's not until it's sanitized. So, you're going to use it in both aspects.
Okay. What about the safety aspect of that question, guys?
I'm going to add to that, if I may.
Yes.
Everything you guys said is absolutely true. However, you can have the best systems in the world. You can have the best chemical in the world. You can have the best equipment in the world. But if you don't have the best training in the world, starting off with chemical safety training, if the end user who's actually using it doesn't know the verification process, isn't trained the verification process, is using the right product for the right equipment, it doesn't matter if you have all the best systems in the world. You need to have training, and it needs to be classroom, it needs to be on site, it needs to be at night when they're actually working. It needs to be a combination, it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be accurate. So that's my 2 cents.
And piling on to the proportioning systems that was said, I think if you got an allocation system where you can limit the access to how many people have access also to the chemicals, is also, I think that goes along with safety, what was just said, and then also goes along with monitoring use. So there's less people with access, there's less people to go to follow up with as well.
Okay. Hey, Kent, thanks for mentioning access. Okay. Just because you work in sanitation, you don't necessarily need access to the chemical cage. Doug, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the consideration that everyone has to look at in each plant is, a 5-gallon pail to a 55-gallon drum to a 275-gallon tote, or a mini bulk tank or a bulk caustic tank or whatever it might be. It's one of those things is, what is the cost benefit of that? Like Chris was saying, if you're buying 5-gallon pails, you're going to pay more for that. So if you can justify going to that next size up, you're going to reduce the amount of handling that you're doing with that vessel, because now instead of 10 pails over the course of a month, you only have one device to handle in the same period of time. But if that vessel that you're upgrading to is going to sit there for 6+ months, 6 to 9 to 12 months before it's empty, then it might not make sense. So it really comes down to what Kent said, training, making sure that you have a good program in your facility to handle the vessel that you're using, whether it, again, is a pail or a drum or a tote or a refillable tank. So.
Okay. Any other comments on this aspect, on this question from anyone?
So I just got one follow-up. I would say too, we're talking about some of the chemical dispensing systems. I would also say find the chemical dispensing systems that give you some data with it as well. There's a lot of systems out there that will say, hey, Bob used 20 gallons of chlorinated alkaline, Susie used 10. They both clean line 1. What's going on? That'll give you some really fresh data right away, accurate that day of what's going on to track it. Spreadsheets are nice, but people get busy and don't always get to fill it out. So it's nice to have that backup system that is tracking that for you.
Okay. Next question. My company has lots of CIP circuits. How can I get my chemical service representative to help us evaluate and certify the CIP circuits are performing as properly, performing properly and as designed? Ooh. Okay, CIP experts, come on now.
So all they need to do is ask.
Ask.
We're here, we're available. But part of our inspections, is going to be that CIP system, titrating it. And that's one thing with, I'm sure with all of us, we're the company's third-party validator. So they're testing, we're coming behind, we're testing. So it should follow up and look the same or close to what they're doing. But that's just one of the things, as long as they communicate, if we're into a plant weekly, one day, and they're there every day, they're going to see things that we don't. So bring it to our attention if we don't, see it right away, and we'll definitely work with them and help them on those things.
Cyrus, one of the processes we developed is having all the circuits on a spreadsheet, and then if you got 100 of them, 100 circuits, we would put that every month we want to certify, 5 or 10 or 15. And so at the end of the year, you've looked at all the circuits at least once, knowing that some of the circuits in a large plant like that, they might only CIP it 4 times a year. So those are scheduled, usually scheduled and with target dates, and we could have everybody show up. But I really like putting it on a spreadsheet. Some folks will print it out and put it in their master sanitation so they can track it that way. But that just gives us a roadmap to ensure that we see all the circuits at least once a year.
Right. And if it's visible, it's hard to miss it.
Right.
Okay.
Good point.
I would say yes. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Thanks, Chris. I just want to say that you have to stay there and watch these CIPs. I think that's CIP wash could take an hour and a half, even longer sometimes to verify. To Albert's point, have a chart and make sure you're seeing all the circuits. But the fact of the matter is, it takes time. Your rep has to get out there and he has to actually watch the wash, do his titrations, and it takes time. So if your rep's in there for an hour, let me just say this: ask your rep to come and watch some washes with you, and be there with them.
And to follow up on Gabriel's point here is, ask the rep, and the rep can't be in there 24/7. So the rep's job should also be to help you along with that and to get your people trained so they know what to look for. I tell all my customers, I'm like, at some point, I'm trying to put myself out of a job because I want to install my knowledge upon you and how we can learn that and how you can watch for just not the concentration. Make sure the temp's there. Make sure you got flow. Make sure those pumps are kicking on and off. Make sure spray balls aren't plugged. Make sure we're thoroughly examining that type of stuff. There's even some new systems out there in chemistry that is even tracking that digitally as it goes through the system, which is, again, maybe not for all plants, but it is technology out there and where you want to go with that.
I talked to him about the floor scrubber.
All right.
In the West End. And what do you want to sell the West End for? What's
Okay. Anyone else on this one? Okay. So I'd like to follow up on this one also. As was said, the most important thing that you do as a plant sanitarian, supervisor, manager, quality manager, you need to ask your chemical service rep to come in, and you need to sit down with that person and go over a schedule of when CIP circuits are running so that they can adjust their schedule to make sure that they're in your plant when you need them. It's not just a sales call, it's a service call. They need to work around the schedule when you need them. Okay. And they don't know that you need them unless you ask. Okay. So you gotta step up to the plate and ask the question. All right. Okay. Next question coming from the audience here is excess CIP chemicals in California. How do you dispose of them? If a plant has excess chemicals and that have expired, as an example, how do they get rid of that stuff? Will you guys take it back if it hasn't been used? Or
Yeah, actually on chemicals that's already been delivered, it's hazardous waste and it's gonna have to be picked up as so. We do not, take that back.
Silas, I would add too, what kind of chemical is it that's being used? Is it a sanitizer and it's expired? Look at the label, find out what can be used with it. If it's a cleaning chemical and it's expired, maybe it can still be used to clean drains and floors and diluted down and used that way. You cannot just dump a chemical down the drain. That doesn't fly with anything. But talk to the rep, find out, hey, I got such and such what it is. How can we dispose of that? I've had it happen and we've used I found an old powdered drum of caustic that somebody had and they were trying to get rid of it. It was pretty much clay at a lot of point, but we were able to break it down and use it to scrub floors. There's some stuff out there, the way to do it. It may be you have to call that disposal service, but hopefully there's a way to do it. But definitely communicate that with your rep.
okay.
Add to that.
Cyrus, a
Yeah.
couple more things on that product that's unusable. One of the things that the plant should make sure is that if they don't have a current SDS sheet and on site, that they reach out to which company that material was sourced from, and make sure that they have a current SDS sheet. And then from there you can work on, is it something that we can use in-house for a different task, or do we actually have to get it moved out of here as a hazardous waste? Either way, they're going to need the SDS if they're going to move it out of the property as a hazardous waste.
Okay. Doug, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize that as that product is hazardous waste, if we bring it back to our facility and we discharge it to the drain, if we don't have a special permit for discharging product to sanitary sewer, then we're putting our company at risk for DEQ fines and all kinds of other environmental stuff. So bottom line is there's DOT rules, so transportation rules for hauling stuff away. There's DEQ and disposal considerations. And so I think, I agree that the best thing is if we have proper labeling and SDS, then we can help the customer use that product effectively probably for environmental cleaning, where we're not putting anything at risk, and use it properly. If it doesn't have any of that, if the labels come off, we don't know what it is, then you're going to have to hire an environmental company to come in and test it and then dispose of it properly. That's what they do. So, and it's expensive, but you have to do it.
Okay. So what's critical here is inventory control and management. Okay. So we all know about FIFO, right? Plant people, we all know about FIFO, first in, first out. Okay. You have to help manage that, guys and ladies. Okay. In your chemical cage, you should always be rotating your stock. And that's why it's important. You don't want to have too much stock on hand. Okay. Because chemicals are expensive. And guess what? Waste disposal is expensive. So you pay to bring it in and you pay to take it out if you don't manage it. All right. There was a question about an acid-based cleaner and the use of a Q-tip swab on the surface.
Yeah, I chatted back with him. There is a test for that, for residual acids. I got to look up the part number and get it to him, but there's one for checking alkalinity, one for checking residual chlorine, and then there's one that'll check the residual pH. So it'll turn a certain color if there's acid left. But I have to look up the part number. It's been a while since I've looked at that, Kip.
All right. Another question. Can we ask our chemical service representative to help monitor and verify that we have functioning temperature recording devices, chemical concentration devices, and functioning water circulation pumps for each COP tank?
Yes.
Again, you got to ask. These guys are good, but they can't read your mind. Okay. Once you ask, it's like once you ask a question, you put them on it, they got it. Okay.
Hey, Silas.
Yeah.
I would say it's just like auditing CIP circuits. I would say that we would put that on a master sanitation schedule and verify that whether it's annually or biannually, just like we would CIP circuits. So that's the best way to do it and track it. So we have record of it.
Okay, great answer. Okay, next question. Can my chemical service representative help our plant with determining the water hardness level of our process and cleaning water? Can they help identify the minerals dissolved in our water, such as iron, manganese, silica, and magnesium?
Absolutely. I know here at Westmar, I know Ecolab does too, and DuBois, as a matter of fact, and also AFCO. We have water divisions. We have people specifically for that. So again, ask your rep. We're happy to come in and test your water and then make recommendations on how to mitigate whatever substances you have in your water. As you guys know, the amount of substances in your water, such as hardness, mimic soils. The harder your water is, the more product you're going to use. So you want to use softened water, but there might be iron in your water. There might be other metals in your water that you want to actually neutralize as well. They will affect the ability to clean with the products. You may end up using more products, or you may have to switch to a more expensive product, such as an acid-based product if you have high alkali in your water, not treating your water. So yeah, absolutely. Get us in there, have us test your water, and we'll go from there.
Silas, a couple more things on the water is, one is that all of the municipal water systems will provide you their monthly or quarterly tests that they run. So that's your first step. And then the other is, at some interval throughout the year, you should ask your chemical rep to send the water out to analysis. I think all of us have labs that can do that. The other is if you're on a well, it's very important that you check that, because the well condition will change from time to time, especially as the aquifer goes up and down. So you might find some stuff in your water that's causing you heartburn at certain times of the year. So testing that water is very important. But if you're getting municipal water, you should get that report from them every quarter. It should come to you, or somebody in your facility should have that report.
And I would ask the question, if I were a plant person, I would ask the question right now, today, who's receiving that municipal water report? Yeah. Okay, it could be the folks in the boiler room. It could be the folks in the lab. Okay, the plant may have the information, but if you don't have access to it, it doesn't do you any good. Something else that you might want to consider, if you, from your municipal water supply, do they change water source? As for example, from a lake or river to an aquifer multiple times throughout the course of the year? that's going to have different ingredients in the water, and that may also impact the cleaning ability of your chemicals. So you may want to coordinate with them so that they tell you when they're changing. So, and you may ask for another water test, okay? Because all of a sudden, what was getting clean may no longer be clean by using the same chemistry, okay?
Silas, I would add too here that before when I get a call from any plant that wants me to come in and do stuff, should be one of the first things we want to do, just in the fact that you got to base some of your chemistry around that. And the water can be so, so hard at some points that you can throw the best chemistry in the world, but if you don't have some kind of water softening or conditioner in that thing, it could really throw it for a loop. So I can't say that enough. Take one right off the bat, see what it is. Maybe Albert's seen more better with the city than I have, but I haven't seen where in our area here, very good city reports. They seem to be pretty limited, and most of the labs will do a much more thorough job.
Yeah, I mean, that's one, the city gets the reports, so that's a one to get, but I'm with you, Chris. I trust in my own testing and my own technicians at our labs to do and give me the analysis that I need. So any customer, and I'm sure this holds true for all of our companies, any customer that needs water analysis, it's a matter of taking a 500 milliliter sample and get it to our labs.
Okay, something else you may want to do, folks, is check with your boiler house, because they're doing testing on your water every day. So if you have a boiler, somebody's doing water testing out there every day. And that's a quick way to go check and verify what your water hardness is and what has changed in your water. Okay, any other comments? All right, so let's move on to the next question. Can you task the chemical service representative with monitoring team members conducting manual chemical titrations, report observations, and conduct refresher training as necessary?
Yeah, most definitely. That's part of your service report on those observations. And it's easy to do titrations when someone's, manually mixing. We'll just pull from that sample and test it right then. But that should be, everyone here should be able to do all that.
Okay, anyone else? Chris, you're on mute.
Oopsie. Sorry about that. I would say Mike's 100%. That is something we can definitely do and task us with doing, help that and help with the plant. I would say when it comes to helping with the plant, though, there's got to be a fine line of helping with the plant and not being a big brother tattletale to everybody, and not, your job is not to go manage the employees. Your job is to manage the system and help the employees with it. So if you're looking for somebody, I had one plant say, well, I need you to document what employee does what and does that. That's not our job. We're not managers at the facility. Our job is to help you find the best way and to get your people to buy in the program and trust the program of doing concentrations on a consistent basis.
Training. I think training, working with the folks, empowering them to do it. I think what was just said is true. Not to tattletale and monitor, but to train and observe and then check that against the log and make sure there's no discrepancies.
I think with all of it, everybody on the panel and the associates that we support, they're out in the field working with the customer associates. We're watching. If they're running titrations, we'll stop and watch. I mean, how many times we've shared with somebody to keep a bottle completely vertical and go through that training. So that happens. I think that happens a lot more than we probably report on. But reporting on which employees not doing, if it's unsafe, then yes, we need to go notify a facility manager. But to be correcting employees, that's a little bit of out of our realm.
So I think the consensus is we want to report trends, and always we're going to correct safety issues immediately and report that. But overall, yeah. Report trends and recommend training and conduct the training. Everybody agree?
Guys, if I can jump in for a minute, a lot of test kit instructions that are out there have a QR code on them. And that QR code links you to a video on how to do the test. So yeah, all chemical reps, while they're in there, they monitor that and they'll give you classes. But if you don't want to wait for your rep to come in, you can get that video and look at it right then and there.
Okay, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break, 5 minutes, and come back and wrap it up. We've had some good questions. I think we got a couple more out there. And so far, thank you for the participation. Okay, thanks to the folks in the audience who are asking the questions. So let's take 5. Okay, we'll be back at 10:20. It's 10:15 now.
For those who are back, please take a moment and fill out Dawn's evaluation. The link is in the chat. Super quick, only like 3 questions. And we really appreciate the feedback. So again, please fill out that evaluation link.
Okay, we're just about ready to get going again. Okay, for the, well, not quite. Well, I'm raring to go here. I want to jump the gun a little bit. Okay, it is 10:20. Time to get going. Okay, so for the members of the audience, okay, I have a couple questions for you. Okay, the things that I want you to think about. Okay, and you don't have to answer these questions today. Okay, so the first question is, have you read and understand the chemical service agreement that your chemical company has signed with your company, your plant, whether you are a single plant or a part of a network of plants? Okay, so do you know what what services they are supposed to be providing? All right. Now talk that amongst yourselves. With your sanitation folks and your quality folks and your operations folks. So who knows? Okay. If you don't ask for it, you may not receive it. All right. The second question, does the chemical service agreement identify the frequency of service, whether it's daily, weekly, quarterly, monthly, once a year? It's there. Okay. And it may be more frequent than you say, or it may not be as frequent as you think it ought to be. So what I'm saying to you, if you're not getting what you think you need, ask. Okay. And then the next time the service agreement is renewed, put into it, make sure you have input to get what you want, what you need. Okay. And the last question for the plants is, do you have the emergency contact information for your chemical service representative? On Easter Sunday morning, when you're wrapping up cleanup or just starting cleanup and something breaks and you spill a bunch of chemicals, can you get a hold of your chemical service rep? Okay. On Christmas Eve, when you're shutting down and something goes wrong, can you get a hold of your chemical service rep? Okay. Those are types of things that I think are important or should be important to you. And at this point, gentlemen on the panel, do you care to comment on any of those questions?
It never happens at Monday morning at 10 a.m.
How true.
Yeah.
How true.
Yeah, I mean, I think bottom line is all of us have, whether it's ourselves or one of our team members, our companies are all very reputable, and we're all going to respond to those emergencies within a matter of a few hours and make sure that we have somebody available and on site when and if at all possible to help the customer get through whatever that emergency is. So.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next question for the panel. And actually, I think this is going to be very similar. Can we task the chemical service representative to monitor and report the proper or improper usage of secondary chemical containers during their plant visit?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And going along with that, making sure that we have plenty of secondary container labels so that your containers are properly labeled. Okay. I would tell you that people don't do dumb things just to be doing dumb things. Okay. So we got to make sure that we give them the tools to do the right things. Okay. And as sanitation leaders, at whatever level we happen to be, we got to give them the tools. All right.
Silas, I think it's important to remind everybody that you guys are using these products every day in buckets and pails and stuff. And a lot of times as a rep, we're in the plant every 2 weeks or once a month or every week, whatever it might be. And it's usually not our highest priority to look at secondary container labels, even though we try to do that. And so if you're missing stuff where you need more, again, you guys just need to ask us for them so you have them available to you, and we will get them made and delivered to you. So I think that's the one thing that people say, well, I didn't have any labels, so I didn't know. That's why it's not labeled. I don't have them. Well, you need to ask us for them so we can get them to you.
I'll add to that and say a Sharpie is not a secondary label. We see it all the time. Just because you write bleach on it or soap or the name of the product, that is not a secondary label. It has to be. If it has a chemical in it or is used for chemical purposes, even once, it has to have the proper secondary label. Period.
And never a bad idea to have extras. Keep those in the office and something to discuss every month or bi-week, whatever your service duration for your visits are, and check those as standard practice and make sure there are extras. I know things happen, but just as a backup plan.
Silas, I like to have them put secondary labels, at least the pictures of them, if you have to, in the sanitation binders. You know, Don talked earlier about having that 3-ring binder. It's such a good idea. I mean, internet goes out, you can't get into the data, or something goes crazy, the power's out. I've had that happen. You know, these are all things you can have, but if all else fails, you have that secondary label, you can make a copy and put it on something if we had to in a pinch, but that hard copy is really important.
Okay. Let's see. The next question is, are there IoT solutions for multi-site perpetual inventory with expiration date, especially with varying demand? Would my chemical provider help me move chemicals from one unit to another? Okay.
What does IoT stand for, Silas? I think we're all a little confused on that one.
Okay, I am not sure either. Okay? But that was the question that came in. So I don't. Once chemicals have been delivered to your site, it's usually the plant's responsibility to move or position those where they are needed safely. Now, obviously, if your chemical rep is there and can assist, they will. But I would say that on the whole, it is the plant's responsibility, okay, to safely move their inventory around to wherever it's needed. Okay, again, so that's why it's important to manage the size unit that you're receiving your chemicals in. Okay, and make sure that you work with your maintenance and engineering folks to get the proper dispensing equipment on hand.
By the way,
Silas.
IoT stand for Internet of Things solution. And it would be,
Okay.
I would assume you're referring to them like monitors on each drum or pail that could then, network in. And I don't know if anybody's doing that kind of tracking down to that level on cleaning chemicals, but.
Yeah, it could be like barcode labels too, that you're scanning and tracking inventories that way. So you know that one is in this plant and this other one's in the other plant by bin number or something like that. So then you can do transfers.
If they were also referring to code dates, just to keep track, make sure something's not out of code. In some of our companies like ours, we put Julian dates on it, and then we do let them know how long a product lasts, what that specific product. Each one has a different code date. Another best practice that I recommend is once a product's received, heck, have a Sharpie, write the date on the top of the drum. It just makes it easier for that sanitarian to rotate that product out.
Okay, great. The Internet of Things, first time I've heard that term used. Okay. Okay. Here's one on foaming. Can we task the chemical service representative with monitoring chemical foaming to verify whether the foam is too wet or too dry and whether plant personnel are using proper foaming techniques?
Yes.
Yep.
That's something we're always looking at. I think all of us do that. Are we looking for somebody who's just throwing the foam up on the wall? Or are they going really methodical, going from the bottom to the top, making sure all the surfaces are covered? You know, there are some advantages to drier foam than wet foam, but you have to make sure that the foaming technique is there. That starts with training, basic training when they start taking that job.
You know, one of the things that I cover, especially when we first go into a plant, is a lot of times it's about changing the culture of how we clean and what we need to do. And a lot of plants, you know, bluntly, it starts from the top, and that culture has to start from the top and come down, and then we're there to support them from the bottom up. And part of that is, you know, how to clean properly. So during our observations and what we put on the report and talk to who we talk to, you know, if it's not carried from the top down on, you know, hey, we got to change, we're not doing this properly, it's not going to change. You know, we're there to train, we're there to document. But again, it carries a lot from the company that we're working with to change that culture.
Yes, Cyrus, also in the foam consistency, whether it's wet foam or dry foam, it could be mechanical. Given that they're using the right concentrations, it can be mechanical. And part of that is the investigation that the chemical rep will do with the equipment is, you know, are the pumps on the foam unit correct? Is it the correct pump? Are they using the right ID of hose? Sometimes they'll replace hoses and put a hose that's too small, not wide enough, and compresses the foam. Did someone change the nozzle? So when all of us get asked that question when we're in the field, and all the same as our representatives, we'll look at the mechanical side also, in addition to the human application of it.
And adding on top of that is a lot of us are using, you know, portable foamers that have their pump driven for foaming, for example. And the pump will still function even if the diaphragms have failed inside that pump. And so the foam used to be good and it was nice, thick and creamy foam, and now it's just wet and sputters. And it's because that diaphragm and that pump has failed. And so as a sanitor, if you're in the plant and the foam just doesn't work like it used to, it's most likely because that pump has failed, even though it still functions and it looks like the foamer is functioning. It's really not. So it needs to be repaired.
Anyone else? Okay, next question. And the question goes, Ecolab has sensors in hand hygiene dispensers. Is there a move to add sensors to other dispensers? So I guess that's you, Chris.
Oh, it's not just Ecolab. Everybody has, a lot of companies have those out there. It's definitely something that's getting more and more recognition. I think foam was kind of the first ones to kind of put that out there. It's been out there. It works really well. I have seen some of the gloves though, when you're holding the sensors, they don't work that well. So just make sure. I think it's like a sunroof in the car. Sometimes it's nice, but not necessary. So it's a neat thing though.
So I think the question was getting at more, we have it for the hand sanitizers, but for your other large chemical dispensers, are you looking at having those types of sensors?
Are there being like chemical dispensing,
Right,
type thing? Yeah, there's definitely stuff out there that's doing that. There's even one out there that has a scale driven where the person has to stand on it, so they make sure they're distance away from any chemical dispensing, so there's no, for a safety precaution. Definitely getting more and more involved between pin numbers, badge numbers, and even a weight scale to make sure people are the safe distance as well.
okay. Guys, anyone else want to comment with what your organization is doing? Okay. All right, moving on. Can we task the chemical service representative with conducting chemical right to know training?
Yes.
Yes.
Again, it's a matter of asking, right?
The worst we can say is no, folks. Ask.
Okay, and I'm quite sure that none of these guys are going to say no. They'll just ask when and how many, because most of you have booklets or handouts that you have to bring for this type training, correct?
Yeah.
And I would say with COVID, Silas, a lot of us have to develop online training as well, very rapidly to keep social distance and the other things. There's multiple things that can be put out there for you and your team.
Okay. Next question. What are companies doing to address maintenance tool sanitation? Is training maintenance common in sanitation training?
Yeah, I mean, you think about that, the equipment that we bring in, if it breaks down and we're, a day away for some reason, if we're traveling, it's always good to train somebody at the plant on how to do quick fixes, to keep things up and running. I'm sure a lot of these guys, I know I do, I'll bring in equipment and parts just for that reason.
Okay.
And I think that the way the question is written, it sounds like, what are we doing to teach the maintenance staff about sanitation of their tools before and after they're working on production equipment?
Oh.
And I think that's something that still, it should have been developed a long time ago, but it's plant to plant. The maintenance department is sometimes they're separated from QA a little bit more than they should be, even though they're an integral part of the plant. And so it's something where we're working with our maintenance teams, trying to let them understand that, yeah, it's not just about production. It's about, sanitation and proper technique and proper GMPs that you have to do before and after you service equipment.
Yeah,
To
that's
follow up with, go ahead, Albert.
where I've seen that, where I've seen that organizations having the maintenance group sanitize their tools, that really has to start with the plant operators at the senior level, the general managers, and help us. We'll train them how to clean their tools when they go onto the factory floor. But it's a lot more to that. Is they'll have to have designated carts that the carts can be sanitized if you're taking out there. Very common for maintenance people to have leather pouches with their tools in, and that'll all have to go somewhere else. But training maintenance folks on how to sanitize their tools, God, we got 100 different ways probably to do it, all of us, but it really takes, that's a collaborative effort with the senior team at those facilities to be able to have that done successfully.
Hey, Silas, I'd like to throw in a plug for the November show. I've noticed over the years that more and more companies are sending 1 or 2 maintenance reps to the November show to sit in on the food safety sanitation training. So I would advise all y'all, when you go back to your plants, to mention that to your leadership, that hey, let these maintenance guys go to the training to so they realize better just they are an important part of this whole process. And as you know, some of these guys are ninjas as far as getting into a room to work on something and avoid every foot bath, foot foam, you name it, because they were wearing their leather boots and they don't want to put on rubber boots or whatever. So if you can train them, it'll help you.
Yeah. Okay.
I also think they should be part of the chemical safety and handling training that we provide to the sanitation and sometimes the production crew, just because a lot of times these guys are exposed to those same, corrosive chemicals when they're servicing pumps and other equipment for the plant when we're not available to help with that. And I've had plenty of maintenance people just say, no, I'm not gonna touch that because it's got that CIP chemistry in it. So you're going to have to call ChemStation or Dubois or Ecolab or whoever to have them come from Westmart and have them come fix it for you. And that's sometimes it's almost impossible for us to do in a short period of time. So.
Silas, I would like to follow up with this. It's a culture thing with your team and getting everybody to understand. One of the things I used to hate as a manager, and I still hate this, is that's not my job. Okay. The fact of the matter is, one person makes a mistake in a food plant, it's all of our jobs. You make somebody sick, you make somebody dead, whatever you're going to do, you got to take responsibility. And cleaning your tools and that type of stuff is part of what we do. Everybody can do their job right, and somebody does something that isn't clean and makes somebody sick. it's got to be a culture change to understand, drive that entire thing through the plant, that sanitation is the #1 priority. It's got to be clean before we can do production. That starts with the maintenance staff and the way they protect equipment.
Yeah, the other is when you're doing, when the maintenance group is coming out to the factory floor, you need to look at your organization and your GMP compliance. Do they put on hair nets and eye protection and lab coats, just like you would require anyone visiting the factory floor? So it's a big culture that organizations are working through. Some are very good at it. Some of them have a little ways to go.
I'd go on further to say that whether the tools or GMPs are being followed or not, whatever area they're working on the factory floor or zone 1, that area needs to be cleaned and sanitized afterwards. Regardless.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike, you were going to comment? Okay, so I would tell you from firsthand experience, if you can get one person in the maintenance organization to buy in and to go back into the maintenance shop and talk sanitation and talk food safety, your job will be much easier, okay? They will sell the program, and when they become invested, they will self-correct. So you got to find somebody who's willing to be the soldier for you, to lead the group, and to be the salesperson for your maintenance team to gain buy-in to food safety and sanitation. Okay. Good discussion, guys. Moving on, next question. Can we ask the chemical service representative to monitor and report current good manufacturing practices compliance issues observed during their plant visit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And again, we're not asking you to be, we're not asking the chemical rep to be policemen. Just report the general observations. Don't necessarily need names unless there's a safety issue, but report the observations. You are another set of eyes that can help reinforce and change culture, okay? Because frankly, people see you guys all the time and they don't give you a second thought. They do what they do, and sometimes doing what they do is not right.
You know, Silas, when we find someone doing things correctly, that's when I'll ask their name, and I actually put it on the report, kind of give them an attaboy,
Yeah.
point that out to management.
Okay.
I think a good practice as well is to review the previous report and see if there's any continuation of bad practices or any duplicates like that. And conversely, what was just said, not just looking for the negatives, but to try to find that positive, pump people up, really get them excited about, you know, what we're doing and trying to accomplish as well.
Okay. Wow, all of a sudden I looked like I had 7 questions in the chat box. Wow. All right. So next question. Should the chemical service representative document broken and out of service cleaning tools and equipment in their written service reports?
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's about food safety. So absolutely, we want to make sure, you know, I said a minute ago, you know, it's about all hands on deck, and it's about having everybody know that this is part of their job. It's also part of the chemical rep's job. You see something, they're doing something unsafe, speak up, say something. I mean, we've all seen a guy probably scrub something and then scrub a food contact service. So, you know, that's okay to stop. Hey, don't do that. Stop. Let's get somebody help. You know, we got to speak up and say those things, protect that plant. That's our part of our jobs.
And have a discussion with them. Don't like Silas was saying, others have said, we're not cops. We're not there to be cops. We're there to improved. So have a discussion with them. You see something, a GMP not being followed, have a discussion with them. They may be doing it for a reason that you can correct, rather than correcting what the result of what they're doing. Go back to the symptom of why they're doing it, and by having a discussion with it, you might be able to find out their entire reasoning, and it's something you don't even have to document. It's a conversation you have.
Right. And again, I think my experience has been is that regardless of the company that I'm working, my chemical company, my chemical service representatives, those guys all have good interpersonal relationship skills. They are good at talking to people. So I would tell you, ask them to do whatever it is you need them to do, okay? And they can help you change the culture in your plant, okay? Without being heavy-handed about it, okay? And more important than anything is that their job is to report back, not necessarily to give you names, but to talk about trends, okay? If it's not an immediate safety issue, talk trend, not individual, okay? All right, that would be my recommendation. Okay,
Silas, I just saw one more quick thing. I tell everybody this, and I got a little law enforcement background on myself. So I always tell people, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So think about it when you're talking to people. You got to find a way, I always tease people. I might not like that dress my wife's wearing, but I'm not going to say it like that, right? It's just the way you say things, talk to people, find that out.
Okay. Next question or comment, I should say. My chemical rep company has never observed us during cleaning and sanitation. Is this a standard service? As a small food facility, less than 30 employees, does this need to be in my service agreement? My rep only helps me place orders for chemicals.
This is part of our service, and I think we all agree. This is part of our service. Not just to go in and we're not salesmen per se, right? We're there to improve efficiency, compliance, and reduce costs. That's what every six of us, that's what we do. That's what we do. We just don't sell chemical. We're not chemical vendors. We're a cleaning and sanitation resource.
Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, I think that the general comment that I've heard today, and this goes right back to this question, is ask. If they're not coming in, ask, because if it's a third shift sanitation crew, I mean, the rep probably is not going to volunteer to come in at 2 a.m. and say, hey, I'll be happy to do that, throw that out there without you asking for it. Because if it's the way that it's always been done, that might be how that person's used to it. So they don't want to, or they don't feel the need to change anything because they don't think anything's broken or needs to be fixed. So again, as the producer, you guys need to ask the questions like, hey, can you guys do this and help us out with this? And the answer will be, yeah, we can. No problem. When we want to schedule it.
Yeah, I think there should be a discussion on that for sure. No matter if there's 30 employees or 300 employees, maybe there's different service intervals, but food safety is food safety. And I think we should be supporting that no matter what the size of the plant or the amount of employees.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Good input, good feedback. Next question. Should we rely on the sanitation service representative to provide guidance on the cleaning of new equipment?
Most definitely. A lot of times we'll see new equipment come in, and what's that equipment's main use? It's for production. It's not meant to clean a lot of times. So yeah, once we can get in there, especially with new equipment, or even prior to that, when they're talking about getting in a new piece of equipment and asking us for information in regards to it, we can really help them, avoid a lot of problems down the road.
Okay, anyone else?
That sanitation design piece is huge. Like, where are we looking, not just for production, but how are we going to clean this thing? I mean, that's stuff we got to find out. Guys, I was in a new plant here not too long ago, I remember, and they had this brand new chiller system. Well, the company didn't want to pay for the extra safety features, so they had to lock the thing out, which powered the unit down for 15 minutes to take 6 guards off. It took 2.5 hours to take the guards off. You know, we'll look at not only the production piece, but the sanitation piece. How we're going to do that most efficiently is huge. And is that a machine going to be cleanable? That's the biggest thing.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I'd like to say again, in one of the organizations I work with, over a 5-year period, we built 3 brand new plants. And in every one of those plants, my sanitation chemical provider was asked to come in and provide us feedback and information on how to clean and what chemicals to use on that equipment in the very, very preliminary discussions about what equipment we were going to bring into the plant and where that equipment was going to be located and what type of systems that we need to put in to clean it with. So your chemical sanitation vendor is a trusted partner. I would tell you, get those guys involved early on, because the more they're involved, the easier you're going to have a time in cleaning that equipment and the longer that equipment will last. Okay. All right. So let's see here. Okay. Should we request the chemical service rep to review chemical titration logs for trends, issues, training opportunities, and the over or under use of chemicals and sanitizers?
Absolutely. That's what we do.
That's all part of the service report, and that needs to go over with the customer when it's sent out.
Okay. I agree that it should be gone over with the customer, but I would tell you, when I worked in a plant, I wanted to review my customer service report before my sanitation chemical guy left the plant. Okay. So if there were issues, you know, we could decide what corrective actions we needed to take. And I knew what I needed to do and what I could depend on him to do. Okay. And I would tell you that when your chemical service rep leaves the plant, okay, and the service report is in the binder, in many cases, the next time I see that report is the next time he's in the plant. So we want to avoid that. We want to have a face-to-face conversation, okay, to close those open loops so that we don't have gaps that develop. All right.
Exit meetings are huge.
Yes, exit meetings. Okay, I think this will probably be our last question. Okay, and this is a doozy. Should the cleaning representative, chemical representative, be requested to provide recommendations for cleaning, commissioning, qualification, and validation process for new equipment and construction projects? It was similar to the other question, but they added a little more into this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And as one of you guys was saying earlier, get us involved. The earlier you get us involved in that process. I know we're working on a couple of projects now. It's still on paper, and we're talking about what equipment we're going to bring in and the why of it and planning it all out. Get us involved early in the process so we can start making those recommendations to you as soon as possible.
Not only the equipment is it, and the placement of equipment. We've all had a situation when we've got a new production floor and all of a sudden we have a big old tank right over a drain, and the issues that causes the facility for years on end. So it's looking at that design and saying, okay, what equipment's going to come in and where's it going to be on the factory? And then how do we want the floor to slope and the drains to be designed? So we're not running water underneath equipment that we can't move.
Okay. Okay, I said that was going to be the last one, but we got one more. Okay. Can anyone recommend a good organic defoamer?
Yes.
Call any of us.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good answer.
Hey, Silas, I would like to follow up on just one thing about that last question would be, there's a big difference between validating equipment and verifying equipment.
Yes.
So verification and validation are two different things, and I think a lot of people think they are the same. So, validating is something scientific that shows that your process is becoming clean. That's through a lot of swab testing and that type of stuff. Verifying is something that we're doing to just, as a rep, kind of a third party, we're going to verify that these steps are what your SOP is being written and they work. Okay. That's what we're trying to do there. So just make sure that that process, especially on new equipment, you've got a pre-drawn validation plan for that piece of equipment, and then you get your rep to come help you verify that. And your rep will totally work with you and help you do all that. But that's the steps you need to be taking with new equipment.
Okay. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for your knowledge and your willingness to participate and to help us be better food processors. To our audience, please take a moment to fill out the survey questions on the panel. Okay, we need that feedback so that we can make this better, so that we can better serve you. This has been a great opportunity. We thank you for attending. We're happy to do it again if you want. No, you have to tell us if this has been a service that is of value to you. Okay. Okay. And you can do that in the feedback. You can send us an email. You can call us. You can call Kathy. You can call, and more than anything else, guys, one other thing I want to say today. We owe a tremendous thank you to Kathy for organizing this. Without Kathy, we would not have been able to put this on. And so, Kathy, I want to say thank you. We appreciate you, and we need you. So thank you again and again. And
Hey, Silas,
you do.
we got 30 more minutes before this ends.
Oh, you do? I thought
Yeah.
we ended at all right, 30 minutes. Well,
Yeah.
do we have any other questions out there? Heck, I thought I was ending right on the hour. Okay. But again, if there are questions, we'll stay. But if not, we won't drag it out just to say that we were here. Okay. So guys, if you have questions, please, we'll run this until there are no more questions. Okay, I do have a question. I think I already know the answer. And the question is, should we rely on the sanitation service representative to provide guidance on the cleaning of new equipment?
Yes, guys, anybody?
Yes, I think it was, I
Like,
think some of the answers before, yes, absolutely.
I mean, those 6 guys have probably, if not them somewhat in their company, has probably seen every piece of equipment out there, unless it's something your company designed and built in-house. So yes, get them involved early.
And Don, just to follow up with that is that we don't always have all the answers, but most of us can reach out to our organization and find somebody who has the same piece of equipment and some of the same challenges down the road. I had a new tank system here that I hadn't really seen before, had some drawings on it, ended up talking to one of the other guys in our organization, and he put it right. It gave us more information than we ever had on it. So again, it's all about communicating and what you got out there in your organizations.
All right, great. Thanks. See what else we got here. Okay, on test kits. Okay, can the service representative provide training on the test kits?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
recommending the right test kit for the right application as well.
Okay. Okay. Something in regards to test kits that I saw a lot in one group of facilities that I work with was that we would have test kits that had expired. And I lay that at the foot of my chemical service representative and the sanitation manager and whomever's using the kit. Everyone should be checking the best use by date or the expiration date printed on the side of the container. Okay, is that what we would expect?
Absolutely. No, you hit it right on the head, Silas, on that. I mean, when we go in and verify and validate, we use the test kits on site. And if we're using those test kits, it's our responsibility to make sure they're functional. The instructions are in there and that all products are up to date.
And Gabriel, even to follow up on your thing, is right. The one thing that reps can do as well as you can do is try to calibrate your test kit. Some of those droppers, they're set up to drop 20 drops a minute, how that flows, make sure they're not plugged. These are all things, especially, a caustic type test kit gets that real kind of crusty on top. If we can fix that and look at that as well.
Okay. Okay. Another question. Titration every week too often to gauge any real change to concentration?
Say that again, Silas.
Titration every week. So I guess the question is conducting titrations every week too often to gauge any real change to concentration?
If it's a food sanitizer, you should be testing it every day, every use.
Every use.
So that's, if it's food contact, it's got to be done every day, every use. That's the type of thing. You fill out a sprayer to spray sanitizer, it's got to be tested, documented. Okay. It isn't written down. It didn't happen. As far as your soap concentrations, what you guys are doing, I would say weekly is a pretty good bet. I mean, typically you have a 25-gallon foamer, you're going to add 1.5 gallons of chemical roughly. You're going to know those concentrations are pretty much on spot on. But again, you're swabbing something, maybe you have a swabbing trend that's showing that things aren't getting clean. It's a good start to look at concentration to make sure that they are being used correctly.
Another thing I've seen with titrations and documentation is make sure you have a range, because a lot of times, let's say if it's a parasitic acid and you want to be between 82 and 500 parts per million, because that's what the document reads is acceptable, no rinse level, but they want to shoot for 200. So on their documentation, they're saying, no, I want to titrate at 200. But if they're audited and they're at 250, well, their document's saying, hey, it's 200. Well, when they are still within range. So you want to make sure that their documentation has the accepted range on it.
Right. And the last thing on that is you actually have to titrate based on what your documentation calls for that detergent. So if it says daily, you better be doing it daily.
Yeah.
And if you only need to do it weekly, then you need to change the documentation to say you can test it weekly. Because if you're not testing it daily and it says daily concentration of your CIP caustic, you're going to get dinged on your audit.
Yep. Okay. Unless you have a CIP cycle that's daily, you might want to word your documentation so that it says once per CIP cycle. Okay. But again, whatever your document says, the frequency is, that's what you need to be doing.
And my kind of rule of thumb was definitely on anything that's a critical control point. That's every time it's cleaned because it's critical.
Okay. Let's see. Let me see. Another good question here. Can a sanitizer be reused if it is used in a closed system for multiple tanks? Example, sanitizer is pushed through from one tank through piping to the next tank and through piping to the next tank since the line is not broken. The tanks have spray balls and provide adequate coverage for all. Let's see. For all the surfaces, the system is technically considered one system until there is a break in the line.
Well, I think the main thing you have to be concerned with is that validated, from tank to tank. Are you still within range when you do that? Or is there a drop point? So as long as it's validated.
What do you say, Don? TIP expert.
Yeah, I had a 30 years ago, a Cyberling plant that they all 6 of their pasteurized tanks were on one circuit. So you're right, I'd go in and out, in and out, in and out, and I would make sure I grabbed a sample out of the last tank in the circuit, just like Mike was saying, to validate or verify that there wasn't any water in some of those tanks that diluted my sanitizer. But yeah, as long as it's a single circuit, but when that circuit ends, it goes down the drain. You can't catch it in a bucket and go use it somewhere else. Once that circuit ends, and that's usually when you look at the label, I think a lot of them even have statements kind of to that effect.
Okay, Don, on those type systems, you can reuse that solution as a first rinse, not as a sanitizer, but as a first rinse, perhaps in your next cleaning cycle.
Yeah, if you needed a little acid hit, if it's a acid sanitizer, yeah, you could if that'll help you. But yeah, it's most labels say sanitizers are a one-time deal. So anyway.
Well, you're not using it as a sanitizer if you're using it as a pre-rinse. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing you might want to make sure that you check, if you're running it through multiple tanks, you want to check, at the end of the first tank, is your concentration too high? Is it right in the middle of the range, or is it too low? Okay, because if it's too high at the beginning, okay, then you're not legal. So you want to make sure that you're using your sanitizer within the proper target and range at all points throughout that cycle. And again, that needs to be validated at some frequency.
Silas, you're 100% correct in saying that. And I would also say with your soap concentrations, there's not a lot of legal definition on soap use, but there is, you can overuse soap. All you're doing is making the chemical guy rich, but that concentration is a guideline, but just what you guys are doing to make sure it's clean. If you can get away with half an ounce a gallon and get it clean, great. But you got to make sure it's getting clean. That is the number one thing. You cannot sanitize dirt. So if that tank isn't clean, don't run sanitizer in it.
I agree wholeheartedly. Okay. All right. Let's see if we got another question here. Let me go to my reserve list. Okay. Can we ask our chemical rep to provide training on topics like mathematics of sanitation, ATP use, titration techniques?
Yes, we can make recommendations.
Okay, and what I've seen is that in some cases, the chemical rep that's servicing your plant may not be able to provide that training, but within the organization, they will call on other resources to come in and help. All we have to do is get it scheduled. Okay. right.
I see a question here talking about proficiencies, analyzing, performing titrations, verification titrations. All these companies, or most of them, have access. The manufacturer of the test kits did a verification process where they brought in 4 different vendors' test kits, did known amounts of chemistry, peracetic, quat, alkalinity, everything, and showed that, you know, the test kit verifies out to be working. And plus there is documentation. I have heard of auditors asking the customer in the field to do a validation of the test kit. And there is documentation and procedures to do that. But I've only seen it once in 20 years. So I don't know if you need to go that far, but if you ever have an auditor saying who validated that this test kit works, that documentation is available. Just ask your chemical rep and they will ask the manufacturer of the test kit.
Okay. Good. Whoa. Here's another one. If you use ethanol as a sanitizer, can you reuse ethanol received from a supplier if we capture it after a sanitation and reclaim, evaporative, and condense the ethanol and bring it back to greater than 90%?
The label? No.
Yes, I would agree with you. No. Sanitizers are single-use materials. Okay. Question number 5, chemical safety, GMP, color code observations, gloves, face shield, chemical rain suits. Are these devices being worn properly? Can the chemical reps comment on those types of observations?
Absolutely. We can comment on those. Again, have a discussion. Not everything has to be written down. Have a discussion. Ask the why question.
Mm-hmm.
Also, how they're being stored, put away, the cleanliness of that as well, so they're not balled up in a corner somewhere. Making sure that they're taken care of properly for next use.
Silas, the thing about this is it's even more important is with COVID with what's happened with COVID, PPE has gotten outrageously expensive. I mean, what used to cost $175 to $250 a person to outfit, now we're at almost $375 on average to house an employee with PPE. It's really gotten expensive, and how we need to keep track of that, make sure employees are taking care of the equipment and the PPE they're given, because quite frankly, if plants got to buy this every day, they're going to go broke. So really preach that to employees about taking care of PPE, hanging it up, rinsing it off when they're done, and, you know, save that company the money, because it gets expensive quick.
Okay, good question. Good answers. Okay. Can the chemical service rep comment on observations on adherence to traffic patterns for people and rolling stock during their service visit?
Definitely. I mean, plant design is huge. And, you know, that's part of our expertise, is coming in there and showing them the proper traffic pattern. And I mean, if plant's already built and they're operational, they should have known it already. But, you know, there are times when we see people going into areas that they shouldn't, and, you know, back and forth, and those need to be pointed out.
Okay. Good answer. I'm looking here to see if I can get to the next question. Question is the definition of a sanitizer single use only?
Almost, I've never seen one that isn't. So all sanitizers are controlled by the EPA. They have an EPA registered number, and every one that I've seen is a single use sanitizer.
Yeah, if it's not on the label,
Yeah.
you have to use it for the label, bottom line.
Yeah.
Label,
Especially parasitic acid. I mean, once it's mixed with water and air, it starts breaking down right away anyways. So it's, you can't even really store it and try to reuse it later. It's the efficacy is going to be down the, down the tubes.
okay. Okay, let's see. Okay. Ethanol we purchased doesn't state single use only.
Well, the ethanol's not, if it's not designated as a sanitizer with an EPA number, it is not a sanitizer.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay, and I think that is the critical distinction.
Yes.
Regardless of where you buy it or what you buy, if it doesn't have an EPA registration number on it, it can't be classified as a sanitizer.
Yeah.
It could be a cleaner, it could be a lot of other things, but it's not a sanitizer.
Yeah.
It could be a
And
sterile.
Sarah's, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Also, that EPA's that EPA number is on the upper right-hand side on all of our labels. That's where that's housed. Very easy to identify.
I think an easy way to maybe describe this is we sell multi-chlor, which is made by HASA. It's sodium hypochlorite, so it's bleach, right? It's a registered sanitizer. And we also sell unregistered bleach. It's 12.5% sodium hypochlorite. So they're the same exact product, but one of them has that EPA registered label on it. So it is a sanitizer. I can't use my unregistered sanitizer and make kill claims that it's going to kill the bacteria, even though it probably is doing the same work. I can't make the claim because it's not labeled as such.
It's all about what the lawyers allow on the paperwork.
Okay.
A lot of breweries like to use alcohol to spray valves, and you'll see them go to Costco and buy it a lot cheaper. But the problem is there's no EPA certification on it.
Okay. So
There's
again,
also no letter of guarantee.
no letter of guarantee and no EPA registration. So they haven't done the background work to prove that it can be used for what you want to use it for.
Right.
And I'm going for total memory, but I thought ethanol could only be used like as a hand sanitizer, not even as a hard surface sanitizer
Right.
anyway. So yeah, I just don't believe you can use ethanol as a hard surface sanitizer, but I'd have to definitely dive into the regs to look.
Okay. And again, I think we all agree that if it's not on the label as with an EPA registration number as a sanitizer, you can't use it for that. You can use it for other things, but not as a sanitizer. Okay, let's see if we got any more questions here. Okay, Kathy, do you have any questions that you've copied down that we haven't gotten to yet?
Nope, I think you guys covered it all that I have, so thank you. That's awesome.
Okay, so we're going to end about 11 minutes early. And again, folks, thank you for coming. Again, about comments. Okay, if you think this was useful, let us know. Okay, an email, a comment in your evaluation section, a message, would be great. We can't help you if you don't ask. And to my panel members, gentlemen, thank you. You were great. I really appreciate the support that that you gave us. And again, Kathy, as always, you've done your super job. Thank you. And may you have a sunny afternoon. Okay. And everybody, hey, you got 10 minutes back of your day to go do something good for yourself.
Thank you, Silas.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.